colours change when you go grey? This is something that Susan is struggling. She said, I'd like to understand my colouring now that my hair has turned grey. So there's a few things to think about when we are going grey. And it depends if you're greying from warm or greying from cool, undertone, and also whether you're greying from light or greying from dark, of course. So if we look at a cool example, a cool and dark example, one of the things that will happen as we go grey is our colouring softens down a little bit. So we might go from being a brighter palette to a softer palette. So the colours are not as bright as they used to be. And then we may even, depending how grey we go, we may go from a lighter palette to a darker palette to a lighter palette. So or if we're greying from light, again, we'll go from brighter to softer, but overall lighter. So one of the things we can move quite a bit as we grey. So I used to have dark hair and then I went grey and I ended up with light hair and then I embraced my grey. So it really depends on what version you are doing. But what is interesting is the greys in a warmer palette are different from the greys in a cooler palette. And this is because there is a difference between warm and cool greys. So here are some warm greys and here are cool greys. You can see that these are much more yellowy green. Don't look so good on me because I'm cooler. These are more bluey, you know, or even purpley grey. So, or more kind of just traditional black white grey. But most greys are not, that we're seeing in fabrics, are not just like a true black and white grey, which would be a cool grey anyway. You might have some warmer ones, you may have some cooler ones. So even when we go grey, there will be a difference between the undertone of the grey too sometimes, and from what colour we started greying is going to influence how warm. So if you're greying from red hair, your grey is going to look a lot warmer than if you are greying from a very light blonde, which is probably going to look much more white. So that kind of is something to think about. Now, what it really means though is we've got that undertone of the palette that may not change, but some people it does. But say if you're cool, you'll be, you know, just softening down and then lightening up. If you're warm, you still might wear warm colours, but they may not be as warm as you used to wear. So one of the things, because grey is essentially a little bit cooler, you will find that the colours cool down a little bit. We haven't got that same intensity of the undertone, not intensity, the undertone, the same amount of yellow maybe. You might find that the really warm colours don't suit you as much now. There's slightly less warm colours. So that can also be something that changes a little bit as your hair goes grey. So that is something to think about, is that kind of, that it's still on the warm side, it's just not as super warm as it used to be. Now, I always think the big thing that changes when we change our hair colour is our best neutrals. So your best neutrals come from your hair, eye and skin colours. And so if you say used to have brown hair, then maybe brown, some sort of version of brown was your best neutral. I used to have dark brown hair. This used to be a really great neutral for me. I don't have that colour hair anymore. There's nothing brown about me anymore. So even though I can wear these kind of cooler dark browns, I would not wear the warmer ones, but I can wear the cooler ones. They're not related to me anymore. So now grey, especially the cool greys, have become my best neutrals because you can see they're really related to my hair. And because I've got very light grey hair now, I'm even better in these really light ones versus when I had more darker grey hair, I would have been better darker. So potentially if you had, you know, kind of a warm brown hair, maybe now you want to go for a warm grey instead. So that is the first thing, is what is the neutrals that are best for you? Because when your hair colour changes, your best neutrals change. So that is something to think about, and that is, I think, one of the biggest differences. Thinking about the undertone and the intensity and the value as well. If you've gone from dark to light as well, we have to lighten up our whole wardrobe as well because it's more in line with you. But then also thinking about what are my best neutrals, because they really are the big thing that changes, that I really notice when we go grey. It's new neutrals related to your hair color. So this is where too we can think about, well, I've got all these clothes in some other neutral. Can you dye them into your new best neutral? Like that is also something you can think about doing. We don't have to throw everything out just because the colors change. I have recently, I had all these black boots and stuff that I used to wear when I had the black hair and the very dark brown hair that were great then. Now, I just don't wear anymore, but they're good quality and I've worn them in and they're comfortable and all those sorts of things. So I get some shoe paint and I paint them. And that way I keep getting to wear those things and I can change the color. So don't think that you have to throw everything out and start again. Sometimes we can actually make changes using dye and using, say, shoe paint, things like that. So that is the biggest thing, I think, that as your hair goes grey, it's a great time to reassess your colours, to find out if the colours still work. So if you're feeling uncomfortable in the colours that you used to wear, it's a sign that something about your colouring has changed, because skin changes along with hair. And so, I don't have the same intensity of skin I had when I had the black hair. My skin has changed completely, which is why I could not dye my hair back to that anymore. But, I have learned to embrace the changes. Life would be boring without change. My mother always said that change is as good as a holiday. And, life would be boring if we were exactly the same our whole lives. So I think it's good to think about that rather than rail against the changes, because sometimes it can feel like it's hard work.